You don't need my assistance to do that. But what we are going to be discussing uh, in depth would be the kind of language that is used in writing these letters or emails. Okay, what are the writing conventions that are expected of a professional when they are drafting a letter or when they are writing a report, so on and so forth, right? So that is going to be mostly our concern in the class. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to talk about the format and template and all that. That shall also be a part of course, the discussion on professional writing. But my uh, focus is going to be more on telling you about what kind of language or what kind of convention is suitable when it comes to professional writing, right? So I'll show you a couple of those things. We'll have a general discussion and then thereafter we can follow it up with examples on it. So the way we'll do this session is basically we'll have uh, writing exercises. Some of them would be mainly to show you what the conventions are, and other would be just drafting these letters or emails and all that. So we're going to work together on it. And there's not going to be any homework or any home assignment that you're required to do or submit, right? All submissions would be mostly made in the class. I'm not going to send anything to you to be done at home and then submit later. Whatever submissions you make or whatever writing you make, it's right. So we just like to keep it. Uh, in terms of discussion, what I am discussing, you get to know in the next couple of weeks. We will talk about those extensively at this point. Uh, but let me ask you, how good are you at writing in general, professional writing? Are you able to find difficulty with writing, or are you okay
Ma'am,
with
your
it?
voice is breaking, ma'am.
Is
Your
it?
voice is
Yes, ma'am.
not audible.
See, the weather is bad here. That could be also the reason. It's raining and it's windy. Probably that could be the reason. Okay, just give me a minute. Let me.
Very feeble sound, ma'am.
Okay, how is it now?
It's audible now. Clear.
Audible.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
we'll see how long we can talk because the weather is quite bad. It started raining now. So if I can keep up the stable connection, then good enough. Otherwise, it's okay. Okay. So yeah. So my question was, how are you all with your writing? Like, what is your self judgment about yourself? You find it difficult to, or whatever is your difficulty, right? For some of us, we're all going to be at different levels when it comes to writing. Some of us are very good. We know how to do that even without thinking too much about it. Some of us might be at a stage where even, writing one straight sentence could be a Herculean task. So, for this course, at least, I mean, it's not a problem if you find it a difficult thing to construct sentence without grammatical errors. It is well and good, right? That would help you make full use of the class. But do not hesitate to come to the class, even if that is the case otherwise, right? Because although I will mostly be discussing the techniques of professional writing, I think even those classes should help you to understand grammatical structures as well. So, uh, some of the sessions that we do for this particular, some of the classes for these sessions are also related to the modules that you have in your syllabus otherwise, right? So I think cover letter and all of those things, some of it would be discussed in those modules. There are things that we won't do here which are discussed in the lectures as well, like SOP and all that, right? SOP I don't usually do for this session because again, not everybody requires SOP. Only very few people, especially the ones who are trying for admissions and all, they are the ones who need it. And for them, I think the lecture material is good enough, right? But letters, emails, reports, these are something that all of us have to write at some point, right? There's no escape from that. I have kept the syllabus, the topics that I've chosen are based on what you usually or commonly write in professional domains, right? Um, yeah, so coming back to that question on writing, where do you find yourself when it comes to writing? Or what are the difficulties? Anybody can volunteer. Someone's mic is on, but I don't hear your
Ma'am,
voice.
please, 1 second, repeat, ma'am. What question, ma'am?
I was asking how good or bad you are with writing. If you have problems or difficulties in writing, what are the kinds of difficulties you face? Just trying to understand where you stand and what are the kind of issues you face.
Ma'am, I have an issue of being too verbose. Like I,
Issue of being
like I put too much information when I'm writing. So
okay.
like
Ha
the
ha ha.
text.
Oh, got it. Got it. Right, right. So that's a very common problem in writing, right? You basically trying to say that you sometimes end up writing more than what you're required to. The precision is a problem, right? Or conciseness is a problem, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Um, I'm glad you have brought that up because one of the major feature or elements of professional writing is this conciseness, right? Uh, there are people whose language is really good, who can write very good English, but this conciseness is a great challenge. A lot of people are unable to do that, so you're not alone on that. Even, I've been writing for a while now, it's been years now. But conciseness is a difficult process for even the most seasoned writers. And that can only be brought about by constant revision and redrafting of your own writing. So yes, that's a very common problem in professional writing. I agree. Anything else? Do you find difficulty in understanding, what word goes where? Right, like you don't know the exact word that can sit well in that space so that you can convey yourself completely. Right, this is also, I think, one among the common issues when it comes to writing. Right? You know, but you don't know what to write. Right, being specific. Right, that is also a difficult process. So yes, I think I'm glad you have mentioned this because I think in the introductory slides on professional writing, these are a couple of things that I have intended to discuss with you. Okay, so if you have nothing else to say, anyone else who wants to say anything in writing? You derail from the topic. Yes, yes, yes. Um, in professional writing, that is also a biggest problem, right? You write an email, your purpose is something, but when it reaches the next person, you see that the reason or the purpose for which you were actually writing the email is missing, right? From the content. Yes. So that's also right. I agree. Uh, Okay, so I think I'll in today's class we'll not start off straight. In fact, the first thing that we're going to discuss are the professional emails. So what we are going to do is we're going to do an extensive we're going to take an extensive look at what professional emails are and what are the do's and the don'ts, how each of the fields in an email is important and how they can be crafted carefully, right? So for the first at least four classes, 4 or 5 odd classes, we are going to only focus on that particular aspect, which is the email alone. Then we'll take up report and then maybe eventually cover letter. So I don't plan to crowd the class by taking all the possible professional write-ups, right? SOP and reflective essay and this, that, and everything. We'll begin with the very basic common three things which are required for all of us. We'll spend good amount of time on each of them and understand the structure, the format, the language, the convention, and everything carefully, slowly, so that you are good at doing these three things at least by the end of the sessions, right? By the end of the semester. Okay, just give me a moment. I'm going to share a slide with you. This is like a general introduction to what we mean by professional writing and what is expected of someone when they're asked to write professionally. I'll just share it in a moment. Just give me some time. Just confirm with me if you're able to see the screen, okay? Whenever you're able to see it. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, right. Thank you so much. So, what is professional writing? See, any written communication, right? Any written form of communication at a workplace or a more professional domain, right? A more formal domain is called professional writing, right? You obviously can ask the question, are there different kinds of writing? Yes, there's certainly different kinds of writing. Very close counterpart of professional writing are writings like scientific writing, technical writing, right? You might have heard these phrases somewhere, right? There are people who offer courses in scientific writing and technical writing and all that, academic writing, right? Research writing. What are the differences? They're all professional writing, right? If you ask me, they can all be categorized under the professional writing domain, but they're all a little different from each other based on the kind of audience that each of it undertakes, right? So, for example, in a research writing, obviously all your audience are researchers. Hence, the language is like more specialized. The vocabulary becomes a little too technical in nature, right? And it's also not very accessible to other people. In professional writing, also all of these things apply, but it is not as technical or as inaccessible when compared to technical writing or research writing or scientific writing, right? But all the four, all the other can also be considered as kinds of professional writing. And what is common among all of these, they're all formal in their tone and approach, right? So it's not like your other informal forms of conversations or other forms of informal writing, right? They all have formal tones, right? There's another form of writing which sits in the boundary or say on the margin of all of these, right? That's the social media writing or simply media writing, right? Some people might want to look at media writing as formal, and I'm not going to disagree with them. Media writing is also a formal way of writing, but it is not as formal when compared to, say, technical writing or scientific writing, so on and so forth, right? So it can have elements of informality, or let me say semi-formalities. It may not be entirely or strictly formal. There could be a few elements of semi-formality in media writing or social media writing, but that part is missing in your other forms of writing, like technical or research writing. They are all strictly formal in nature, right? So that is the basic difference. Although media writing also sometimes can, based on the purpose and the audience you're writing for, it can also be formal in its tone and approach, right? But all of them put together, you can call them professional writing, right? Because all of them are done professionally. The word professional here doesn't have any meaning that you don't know otherwise, right? Professional is basically professional, something that is related to work and occupation, right? That's all. So anything. So look at the examples given here: manuals, presentations, proposals, memos, right? Emails, reports, or something like a tablet description, right? When you buy medicines from the shop, you get those tablet strips, right? So the things that are written behind or over those tablet strips can also be sometimes classified under professional writing. Or if you're buying a gadget from the shop and if you're handed over a manual or how to use documents along with it, they're all considered professional documents. They're all crafted together to fulfill a certain purpose, right? So because of that, sometimes professional writing is also referred to as purposeful writing. Simply means that this kind of writing usually has a purpose. This is not something that is done without a cause. It usually has a purpose to fulfill. And there is an end product, the very finish or the completion of this writing, right? So that is also a way of looking at professional.
Um,
Sorry,
can you please zoom in?
I cannot hear you. Your voice is also breaking.
Can you please
Say that
zoom in?
again.
Ma'am, your voice not clear. Yes, ma'am. Your
I am
voice is
not able to
audible.
hear you. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Ah. So, okay, was there a question or you were just saying that it's not clear?
Ma'am, please zoom the screen. He's saying it's very
Yes,
small
ma'am.
You can
letters.
zoom it in your end, no? I think you can zoom it from your end.
Oh, okay, ma'am.
Mm.
Ah, okay. So, yeah, all of those that you see there, including whatever I was discussing, like a manual or a technical document, sorry, not technical document, a manual or a strip of a tablet, anything can, in that sense, be classified as a professional document or a professional writer. Professional writing, another name for it is also purposeful writing. I think that was the last point I mentioned. Okay, so all of these that you see here, right, some of it you have also mentioned, right? Clarity, accuracy, conciseness, and adherence to specific conventions and standards, right? Now, what do we mean by this clarity and accuracy? Can you comment on that? Somebody was saying, no, like I end up writing more than what is required. Now, this is a kind of problem in writing which can directly affect what? Clarity. It can affect conciseness for sure. But when you say that something needs to be written concisely, you basically or essentially are trying to say that write it concisely so that there is more clarity.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
I'm not being able to hear you.
Ma'am, you are not audible.
Ma'am got disconnected. She'll join us shortly. It'll be great if you could please wait for a few more minutes. She'll be back.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry about that. I think I got disconnected. We'll get back to that. Just give me a moment. I'll share the screen with you. Okay. Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Was saying the last thing. I don't know when it got disconnected. Did I talk to you about clarity and accuracy?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So see, the summarily, what I'm trying to say is that all the characteristic features or the elements that are listed here, they're all basically interconnected, right? So if there is a problem with conciseness, then it is going to directly affect both clarity and accuracy, right? So put together, you can say that all of these are the required features to make your document or your write-up more professional in nature. But also keep in mind that one is related to the other. So if one is lost, then there are high chances that the other characteristic will also be lost in your writing, right? So that is what basically it means. Now, quickly a little bit on what are the differences between literary and professional writing. I don't have to discuss this. I think most of you will know how it is, right? But couple of things are important to know as differences, right? And there we discuss them because they are the most distinct differences or the kind of things which you have to follow while you are writing professional documents, right? Some of it is a big no for professional documents. We're only going to discuss those points of difference, not everything. The basic ones, I'm sure all of you know what it is, right? So whenever you are drafting a professional document, then the first thing that you need to keep in mind is that the purpose of your writing. Keep in mind that when you're writing a professional document, you have a purpose, right? You're not writing it for no reason. There is a reason why you're writing it. You have a very specific purpose for drafting or writing that particular text document. And as the writer or as the author, you have to be very well aware of that purpose, right? So, like I mentioned, this is purpose driven writing, right? So, which means that, needless to mention, you have to be very clear of what you are writing, who you are writing. First thing is what you are writing or why you are writing. That is the purpose, right? Second thing is who are you writing it for? The second most important thing when it comes to professional writing is knowing your audience, right? Knowing your audience is a very important part here because that will help you even decide on the kind of language that you would be using to draft this document, right? Am I writing to an audience that knows what I'm writing about? Or is it an audience which is a general audience who may not know the specialized cases that I would like to discuss here? Or are these people who are more sort of, the specialized audience or people who are experts from my area, right? All of these are questions you must ask yourself before you draft a document in the professional space, right? Because this is going to directly influence the kind of language, the sentences, the phrases that you're going to use to draft the document. So audience awareness is then a very, very important part of professional writing. These two things, however, right, both purpose and audience, is something that is not of utmost importance in literary writing. So, literary writing is basically a pleasure driven writing, right? It is written for leisurely purposes mostly. So, who are you writing for is not as important as it is in the case of professional writing, right? So, basically, in literary writing, you can write what you want, and whoever is more interested in the kind of things you write, they will read it, but you don't write for them. These days, yes, because writing has also been commercialized. So there are authors who would write only for a certain kind of audience, right? Even in the literary book. But keep in mind that this is not a really important thing. I can also change my genre of writing if I want. Say I'm somebody who writes young adult fiction and I want to change my genre. I feel like, okay, this is done. I'll write something else now. Maybe I'll write sports fiction. I can always change it. But that's not the case with professional writing. The controller here is always the audience, right? The audience decides what is the language you're required to use or what you're allowed to use in that sense. Okay. So this, I would say, are the most distinctive differences between a piece that is written in literary writing style and something that's written in the more technical or professional style, right? The audience awareness or the audience is very, very important in one kind of writing, which is professional writing, right? Other differences would be based on the language you use. Obviously, again, needless to mention, in professional writing, figurative language, right? In the previous session, we were talking about figures of speech. So that kind of writing is strictly not allowed in professional writing. You have to keep your language direct. You have to keep it more formal in tone. You have to keep it more objective, right? So look at this one: clarity, accuracy, and conciseness, right? So when you say accuracy, you basically mean you use a language that is more specific and direct, right? Don't use any confusing terms, or no, don't use terms and words which you think won't be understood by your audience, because this is purpose driven, right? Everything that you write has to be conveyed properly to your audience, so as to take suitable action on whatever you're writing. But this is not the case with literary writing. You're allowed to use as much of creative freedom as possible, right? You can use the language in whichever way you want. Standard language is not a requirement in dialects of the language, right? To add more flavor and variety to what you're writing. But this kind of exercise is strictly not allowed, or it is restricted in professional writing, right? Okay, so these are some of the distinctive difference between these two styles of writing. Any question as of now, or is it clear? Anything? You're all still with me, right? Just checking in so as to know if I'm still online.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Okay, now elements, I think we touched upon this, but just to put them all under one roof: clarity and conciseness, audience awareness, tone and style, grammar and mechanics, right? All of them together constitute what we call as professional writing, or we can say call them essentially as features or essential elements of writing skills in professional writing, right? Now, what are the additional features as far as professional writing are concerned? Formatting and layout, right? So whatever you're writing, whether they're emails or reports or cover letters, some of the organizations, they have their own templates or their own system and method to draft each of them. Some of them have their own letterheads. If that's the case, then you use that. In the absence of all of that, there are certain standard procedures and standard formats that are used to draft letter reports, so on and so forth. So you should be aware of that as well, right? What is the basic format that I should use while drafting a memo? What's the basic format for an email? Basic format for drafting a cover letter. So this awareness you should have as a writer for writing anything professionally. If the company or the organization has its own way of looking at it, if it has a template, well and good enough. But in the absence of that, you must be aware of the basic formatting and the layout that is allowed in the professional domain, right? So that is one additional feature for the professional writing. Then document types, right? Document types basically refers to, whether it's a circular or a memo. Like how is it different to write a memo and a circular, right? What's the difference between these two? What is the difference between, say, a block layout formal letter and a semi-modified um, formal letter, right? So these are all minute differences between each other, but this has to be you as a writer have to be aware. Like if I give you an example, circular and memo, most of the times the matter that goes into these two, they are mostly the same. There is no much of a difference between what you write in a memo and a circular, but the layout and the format are very different from each other, right? So these kind of differences, as a professional person, as a person who works at a certain organization, you must be aware of these differences, right? So if you're asked to write a memo, don't end up writing a circular, right? So document types and the identification of these document types are required in professional writing. Third is research and citation, particularly maybe not applicable to letter and email and all. These days, I think even for email, some people ask you for sources and references. But this citation and research part is more importantly seen when you're drafting reports, right? When you're asked to write down reports, reports are of various kinds. We'll discuss them in details, especially when you're writing something like a feasibility report or a study report or a research proposal, right? In that case, citations and research becomes very, very important. You have to show the source from where you have borrowed things. Why do you do that? Because that makes your document more credible, right? It shows the audience or the person, whoever is evaluating your work or is listening to your report, whether they are your supervisors or whether they are your investors, they are more convinced of what you're presenting, because when you show sources and citation, it means that you've done your homework, right? You have picked up the information that you're presenting from credible sources. And in turn, it also makes your work look more credible. Hence, this part, although it is largely ignored in professional writing, this becomes of tantamount importance, especially when you are presenting reports to your audience, right? So that is the third feature, additional feature. Then comes editing and proofreading. This is also something that is always pushed towards the back end, right? People think it's okay, it's all right, you know, a bit of spelling error here and there, or a little bit of editing problems here and there is fine. But trust me, it is not fine, right? Because we attend meetings, we look at high level hierarchical meetings wherein people have been fired or people have been chided, at least, to say the least, for having, ended up making spelling errors and editing problems in the slides or the documents that have been pushed for. So, although it looks like a very small thing or something that is best ignored, it is not, right? These all count towards the uh, overall quality and output of the work that you're going to present to, right? Uh, these days, it's a little easier because we have tools available to do all that. But I would still say that proofreading, maybe it's possible, right? Maybe using a Grammarly or something similar to that can help you. But editing is something that you have to do, because you know what is the content that needs to be pushed through, what is the, the uh, correctness and accuracy of what you have written. That uh, machines cannot do that for you, right? You know your audience better, and you should know what are the information that should sit in your report or your presentation, or what is it that you should not be saying. So editing is also very, very important in that sense, right? Professional ethics, of course, needless to mention. Uh, Please cite things properly, give credits wherever due. Do not pass off things that are not yours as yours. Right? These are all considered as big issues in writing domains, right? Adaptability. Now, what is adaptability? Adaptability is you should also learning to write is not just how to put words and sentences together. It is also to learn to adapt to the medium in which you are writing. So the way you write in an electronic medium is going to be very different from the way you're going to use in a print medium, right? The way you use language, the formatting, right? The sentence style, everything varies depending on the medium you're using. So say, for example, you're writing an email, right? If it's a professional email, then your sentences will have to be more crisp in nature than, say, the language that you'll use to draft a report. In report, you can be a little more detailed, right? Your sentences can be a little longer. You can add more details, but that's not the case in email, right? Email is even otherwise considered the shortest and the quickest form of communication. So if it is the shortest and quickest form, then it is our duty to make sure that the message that we write are also crisp and short, right? You cannot go on writing, go on and on pages after pages in an email. So suitability of the medium is what adaptability means. Change your writing, or learn to adapt your writing or modify your writing based on the medium that you're going to choose to write, right? So say Twitter. In Twitter, you cannot go on writing, right? There's a restriction in there, as opposed to say other forms of social media, right? So you need to adjust or change your writing tactics and conventions and strategies based on the medium you choose, right? Now, I said Twitter and Facebook and Instagram because I know that there are people who would use even those medium. Those medium are not just for you to, post your fun pictures or other things, right? There are people who use them for promotional programs also, right? You work in a company, if you want to use them, you use that as well, not just LinkedIn or other more formal platforms. Even the other social media platforms are used for all of this. So whatever your medium is, you have to learn to adapt your writing to suit that particular medium, right? That is what we mean by adaptability in writing. Any questions as of now? Any confusions? Anything, anything that you felt is a bit off the mark or you did not understand? My voice is clear, right? There's no breaking and all that, right? Anyone?
No, ma'am. It's clear.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any question? Okay. Nothing happened to this. Okay. All right. Uh,
Can we get some examples of bad and good, like
that
so that
I'll show you. In fact, in the next class we are going to start looking at it. We'll start off with this particular. I don't know if you can see it. Just confirm with me in case you can see it or not. Where is that question? You see this one? Structure and format. Is the
yes,
screen
ma'am, yes.
visible to you? So next class, what we are going to do is you're going to look at this. You're going to revisit this page again next class. I'm going to ask you to, go through this, spend some time with this particular email, right, and find out if there are issues with this. Okay. In fact, you can do it now if you want. We'll do this again in the next class, but maybe for the starters, we can see. I picked this up because, this is a kind of writing, which prima facie, in first look, this might look okay. You'll be like, what's the problem with this? Right? This is an all right email. But if you're someone who understands the conventions of professional writing, there are issues that you will detect with this kind of this email that you see on the screen, right? So we are going to do that for the next class, but of course I have a few more things to discuss with you before we get there. But we'll do this activity so that I can show you straight away what we mean or what do we understand by professional writing, right? So this one we'll do. I'll also show you examples of formal and informal writing for the next class, right? I'll give you examples. But any questions from what we have discussed today? Like today in the sense till whatever we have discussed up to now. Okay. So I think I'll discuss these two slides with you on professional tone and language and instances of informal and informal language, and then I think for today we can close. Right. So quickly to talk about what
Ma'am,
we
is this
mean by
session recorded,
tone.
ma'am?
This is recorded, yes.
Ma'am, where can I get
This is
What
recorded.
the
is
link, ma'am?
You'll get the link once the class is over. The same calendar from where you access the link, no, to this class. In the same slot, you will see a playlist being uploaded, right? It won't be done immediately. Maybe by the end of the week or something, you can come back and check. You'll find the recorded session, the playlist with the recorded session there in the calendar. Okay.
I'm under professional tone and language slide. The last point of informal uses an impersonal tone. I mean,
Informal uses an impersonal tone. It should be personal tone. Yes, correct.
okay.
Should be personal tone. This is the last point in informal, right? Yeah, correct.
I was a bit
So
confused.
uses an
Felt like
it should be personal. There's a typo there. I think I wrote impersonal. Or voice breaking or mine. I am not being able to hear you properly. My voice is
same thing
clear,
is
no?
happening here.
Everyone.
Now it's clear. Now it's clear.
Okay. Okay. So, what was your question again?
And nothing. That was only the thing. I had a small doubt that
Yes, yes,
difference thing.
it is. It is personal. No, not impersonal. I meant personal. So you use a personal tone in informal forms of writing, or what is also called as a subjective tone, right? As opposed to a formal tone of writing, which is more objective in nature. See, objective basically makes your tone formal. If you're not using, say, a direct form of writing, direct language to write, or more specific words and phrases to convey what you want to, then you call that more of a personal tone, right? Or non-objective or subjective tone. If your language uses factual, direct, straightforward, specific, if you're using technical vocabulary to talk to your audience, in a sense, if you're keeping it more specific and concise, then you call that the objective tone or the impersonal tone, right? But of course, in the informal one, that is not a necessity, right? The tone changes. You can keep it more personal, right? We'll discuss the levels of formality when we are looking at professional emails. I'll show you examples of how even the very use of salutations in an email, like, when you begin an email, you write dear, XYZ, so and so on. There are changes that you can make within even those kind of expressions, and the changes that you make in those can make your email formal, semi-formal, informal, so on and so forth, right? So that I'll demonstrate to you in the next class. The next 4, 5 classes, we're just going to concentrate on just this email thing and the language that is used to make it professional, right? So, professional tone and language, I will close with this today. Instances of informal language. So, we spoke of formal and informal or semi-formal usage, but I specifically want to bring your attention to some of the instances, in which your language may become informal, and the ones that you see on the screen, like group jargons, slangs, idiomatic expressions, colloquialism, right? These are all 4 or 5 instances that is noted down here, which can make your language informal. So when you're writing, you have to ensure that these expressions or these kind of use of language doesn't creep in your writing. Look at group jargons. What are group jargons? They are any kind of in-group specialized language. Now, what does that mean? If you work at a space in an office, or say you go to a college, there are these phrases and words that you tend to use amongst each other, right? It could be, workspace language, right? But still, these are certain coinages or expressions which you use among your team members or your group, right? So someone who's external to that organization, or even someone who's external to just that group, may not understand what it means. So just to give you an example, in our organization, there are people who talk about, the QPs are not being sent yet. Okay, we did not receive the QPs. So someone who's part of that particular team will know QP means question paper, right? But if I am an outsider to that group and I don't, belong to that particular workspace, I don't know what QP is, right? It can keep me guessing, what is this QP and what are they asking for. This kind of usage and this kind of expressions are called group jargons, right? So group jargon basically means a set of expressions which is used among the uh, team members of a given group, and by the virtue of which is inaccessible or is not understood by people who are not part of the group, right? So that kind of expression, group jargons, are a complete no for professional work. When you're drafting a professional document, make sure that no group jargons are used. Only write language that is more direct and is accessible to your reader, right? So use of group jargons then can make your language informal. Second, again, slangs, idiomatic expressions, colloquialism, right? I don't think I need to explain, right? No slangs and colloquialisms are allowed in professional writing for the reason that not everybody will understand. Fair for us to expect other people those terms and uses are, right? Some of the examples you can see it's on the screen here. We all, we stack, right? And the other words that you see here, these are all more Tamil colloquial terms, right? I've taken these examples because these are some of the expressions we hear in our workspace, right? When people talk to each other. So while you can use that in conversations with each other informally, in professional writing, when you're drafting a document, don't use any of these as an addressal term, right? There are more formal expressions and addressal terms that you must be using. You're required or you're expected to use in the professional writers, right? Then the third type is the stereotypical or biased language, right? So biases usually creep in our writing without our knowledge. Sometimes we don't know. We are conditioned in a certain way to use language um, because language is also something that lives in the society amongst us, right? So a lot of biases that are part of our society, it becomes mixed with the language that we speak as well. So in professional writing, however, one needs to make sure that you keep away from all these kind of stereotypes and biases that would otherwise be part of our language. So this bias can be based on various social categories like say gender or race or ethnicity or religion and so on and so forth, right? Disability, right? So if there are usages or expressions which are socially sensitive and you think are wrong, then they have to be definitely removed from your writing. In fact, the latest manual on writing, right, the Chicago Manual Style, it has very clearly dedicated one full chapter or one lesson on how to avoid biased language while writing, right? So it means that all the international organizations, they take it very seriously. This is not put on the slide for the sake of saying. This is an important part and everyone takes it seriously. That your writing and your speech both are free of any kind of stereotypes or biases, right? You need to clean your language in case you think there are problems. It's always good to show your work to someone before you can, send it off, and particularly ask them to see if there are sections or portions of your writing which are, which may be uh, observed as violating sentiments of a certain social group or category or class. Okay. So some of the examples you can see here, like, mankind, manpower, chairman, man-made, they look very innocuous and harmless, but they are also a kind of language or expressional usage which shows gender bias, right? So I've only included one category of gender and biases of gender in language. There are several other social categories available here. So you can maybe read up a little more about this on your own, right? Then grammatical constructions like phrasal verbs, right? Informal phrasal verbs. Some of the examples are given here: ask out, duck out, or lie down, right? Keep off. These are all considered to be informal phrasal verbs, and they, as much as possible, you should make sure that you avoid them in your writing, right? And then finally, contractions or contractive forms. I'll, you, right? I apostrophe LL, you apostrophe V, she apostrophe S. These are all contractions or contractive forms. In formal professional writing, contractive forms are not allowed. If you want to write I will, you have to write I-W-I-L-L in full form. Okay? Shorthand or short forms or contracted forms as seen here are considered to be bad use or informal way of writing, professional limits, right? So these few instances can directly make your language informal in writing. So make sure that all of these are also corrected while you write. Whatever it is, whatever the kind of document, whatever the document type. Uh, for the starters, when you're checking for the use of language, make sure that none of the 4 or 5 instances mentioned, at least in this slide, is seen in your writing. Okay. Okay. All right. I think it's 8 already, and I'm not going to continue this further. So I think this was a basic introduction for the profession writing and what it more about it. Any questions for me from today's session or anything in general for this? No? Can we
Ma'am,
wind up? Can we call it a day?
Ma'am, I just came
Yeah, yeah.
late, ma'am. So actually,
Ah,
I need a recorded session, ma'am. So that is the reason.
yeah. You will get the recorded session. Just wait for
You
the end
know,
of the week. And
in our calendar, right? In particular subject, right?
in your,
That
yeah, correct.
Okay,
In
ma'am.
your calendar.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Is that all? Can we close then?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I think we don't have anything more. So let's then just close. I'll meet you again next week. So next week we'll start discussing the emails. I have a couple of exercises ready for you, so we can simultaneously also work on those documents so that you understand what these conventions and other requirements of writing. Okay. All right then. Thank you so much for joining in, whoever has come. I hope you'll continue to take benefits from all of this. See you again next week, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.